Good evening, Facebook. I think it's like 8 something. I don't even know what time it is. Anyway, so I had a couple more names that I needed to add to the list of participants in this wonderful scandal that is my life. Aside from all of those people, and these are people that I know of that are in my life, like that were friends or acquaintances. But one in particular that came to mind is Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I don't quite know how to feel about that. Anyway, so some people. So I'm going to talk about some people that were in my upbringing, and that a little bit of background of them, and hopefully this won't be too long of a video because there's a lot of people. So there's this girl. Her name is Jewel. She ended up being a cashier at Stater Brothers with me later on. I think I got hired before her. She was the sister to Patrick Leary, who we were friends for 9 years. I was through his life when he lost his brother in war. He lost another brother. He had, I think he had 5 brothers and 5 sisters. And a lot of them died. And Jewel was very special, which is even sadder because she didn't destroy the generational curse in her family. Jewel was really, really soft-spoken, very sweet, very quiet, beautiful red hair that I recall. And Jewel was in a car accident. Her father was driving, her mother was in the front, and she had other 2 sisters in the back. And Jewel was the only one that survived. Her father was drunk. And I remember, in my mind, I remember seeing her crawling out of the vehicle. But this was after, I think, I found out at work that she was in the accident and everything. So Patrick and Jewel had been through a lot. So it really saddens me that Jewel is a participant in what's going on here. Aaron, again, the only Aaron I can think of right now is the Aquarius who has a gambling addiction, and I used to work for him, even though I think he's like almost 5 years younger than me, but he was the only one that I can think of. Aaron. Isabel, she was also one of my sixth grade friends once I came to when I moved from Barstow to Apple Valley. She was one of my 6th grade friends. It was basically Erica, Leah Riley, Isabel Orozco, Jennifer Bush, and Sherry Steen were basically my go-to friends. Amber Coivisto came later on, I think around like 7th or 8th, I think 8th grade. Manuel Montenegro was probably 7th grade too. Let's see. Alicia Klein, little Chinese girl. I think she was half Chinese. Her grandmother hated my guts. Her grandma was a piece of work. Let's put it that way. She was the neighbor around the corner. And she and I were literally almost inseparable. So that makes me even sadder. I have no idea what exactly she participated in, but she lived right next door to Mark, which was my brother's friend who seemed like he was decent, but he had 2 older brothers who liked to BB gun cats in their faces and watch them suffer, and then also put TNT up their butts and watch them explode. So who knows? Alicia was around that too. Maybe that's why Alicia's grandmother was very anti having her go out. I don't know. But then she did start talking about Mark, so I guess, she did get affected. There was an around the corner to us, around her corner. So basically where we lived on Pahaska down the street before we went up to her street to where Alicia Klein lived, there was a family there, a very racist Caucasian family, where there was Zachary and there was Jeremy. And Jeremy was a little torture. And I remember my brother was older, so they were more my age. But because there were boys, my brother had to come, I guess, to watch over me. And Jeremy was a character. He really was. Um, not in the best way. Let's just put it that way. So I've got monitoring spirits around here. I guess they want to hear what I have to say. There's 3 people that I wonder. Gibran, he's an Aries. He was one of my good friends. Went to San Bernardino State, well, Cal State San Bernardino, for his bachelor's in, I think it was biochemistry, which was fascinating because I always thought he would get into something like producing. He had some hilarious skits he would make. His brother and I, on the other hand, were very similar. Safwan was into physics, so I was like, yeah, let's do it, support. As Safwan, I was drawn to him just because he and I were, we had similar ideologies, and I liked that. Abdul was also one, and then, like I said, Ahmed, actually, I didn't mention him. Ahmed, he had a huge crush on me. He was a sweetheart, but he was 18, I was like 23, and his sister was a piece of trash. What was her name? Allah? Anyway, she was trash. She dated Samuel for a while and broke his heart, and Samuel was such a sweetheart. She just did it because Samuel had a thing for me, and if I would have ended up with Samuel, we probably would have been good because we were both... Samuel was very patient, and I think if he actually got to know me, even though I was pretty chaotic back then, it would have been he would have seen a very different side of me, but I was always on the defensive, so I'd be nice for a minute, and then I'd be like, nah. And then, but I used it as a complete facade. It was my protective shield to be a little crazy, aggressive, Besides, the whole stereotype of a black woman is crazy anyway. It kind of fed into me not having to do that much for people to perceive whatever they wanted, and that protected me. Anyhow, the only, I don't know if she was a cheerleader, but the only one, Priscilla Paredes, she was a freaking idiot. Like, she was always like, yeah, she was ugly. She was just really tall. She was, she was average. There were girls hotter than her, but she was not very pretty. And she was always like, oh yeah, I'm so beautiful, I'm amazing, look at me. And she would just do the craziest stuff for attention. Like, I remember 2 other classmates had put her upside down, and they were holding on to each of her legs. And she literally was like, I'm going to pass myself out. And she choked herself until she passed out. And this is the weird stuff she would do for attention. I was like, what? I just couldn't believe it. So she's a little Lulu. And then I remember she ticked off somebody and she got her butt kicked, like hardcore. I think she got her butt kicked twice. And she still was talking her smack. I was like, man, I don't know why she doesn't get it. Like, you just want to get your butt kicked. Like, she just would not shut up. But everything she said was stupid. And then I remember the last thing that she and I had an altercation with. She was probably my turning point. I was always very quiet, very meek, like, okay. And one time, and this was the last time I was ever nice. This was junior year, I think. And I was just done. I was done being treated like crap. And I was sick. And she was like, hey, you got your homework? You got your math? I need it. I need to copy it. Everybody always copied my math. And so I was like, yeah, just a minute. And I'm like blowing my nose and whatever. And she's like, oh, I don't want any snot on it. And I don't know. And everybody laughed. And I think that was just it for me. I finally snapped. I think this was after I wanted to commit suicide too. But I finally snapped. And I was like, you know what? Sorry. I don't have my math homework for you. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, that's not my problem. You need to do your own work. If you didn't do it, that's not my problem. Oh, well, I can, just look over. I said, there's so many other people in the class. Why don't you do it? I said, there's other people. You can ask them. I said, so-and-so already looked at my homework. You can ask them. Why do you need to ask me? She's like, well, I was just kidding with you. And then she said something like, oh, can I borrow a piece of paper or something too? And I was like, no, because you always borrow a piece of paper from me every freaking day. I said, you borrow, but you never bring anything back. So no. And she's like, I was just kidding. I was like, and I'm not. She's like, you don't have to be like that. I was like, no, but you don't have to keep on asking. I said, you don't have to keep on asking and begging for stuff when you have your own stuff. And that was just it. And everybody was just like, and that was the end of Nice Jackie. Then came out Gothic. braiding my hair. It's so funny because I saw that on Les Twins, braiding my hair right here in my face. It was kind of like symbolizing that I was in chains, and everything I wore after that was so symbolic about entrapment, absolute entrapment, but with symmetry, always symmetrical. And Angel was the only ex that I ever dated that noticed when I would wear stuff particularly symmetrical or asymmetrical because of how I was feeling. I really loved that aspect about him. He recognized me like nothing else. Anyway, so other people. Charlotte. I was in choir with her in high school. She didn't like me. I remember I was using words because, we learned vocabulary, and I was using words, and then she was like, why do you have to use that word? Because she didn't know the definition, and I was purposely using words so that I could keep it in my vocabulary. And she was like, well, why do you have to use that? I said, I think it was elegant, not elegant. It was eloquent. And I said, no, it's eloquent. And she's all, I'm not talking about how pretty it is. I said, I didn't say elegant. I said eloquent. And she was like, well, why do you have to use that? I was like, because that's like our vocabulary word for this week, and we have a test on it. Like, why wouldn't I use it, And she felt inferior. I could tell. And she was inferior, period. She just was. At the time, I didn't look at her that way, but looking back, I'm like, yeah, she was average, if not below, But anyway, then, Augustine. He was a character. Karaoke, he would always sing like Frank Sinatra, over the moon, all stuff. And he was so funny because he sounded gay, and some people would come to me, we would hang out, and he'd be like, oh my God, Jackie, da, da, da. And he just had a light voice, but then when he would sing those songs, it just took everybody by surprise. I loved Augie, but he was absolute druggy. And I know he was married, and then I guess stuff happened, and she kicked him out or something, and then he was like, yeah, I'm living in Riverside now, because he was living outside of Riverside, and it seemed like he was trying to get his act together, and he was like not drinking as much, but I think he was popping pills more. I think that's really what it was. We have Giovanni. Well, before I do Giovanni, Valente. Val was also, I met him in community college. He was a pretty quiet guy. I knew he had a thing for me though, but yeah, what? And he had his whole little, I'm a metal guy. And he was just the quietest thing in the world. So, man, Val, really? You really just had to try to be a part of the group, huh? Okay, Giovanni. Good story. Giovanni, I think at the time I was 25 and he was 23 or something like that. I'm sure he was younger than me. I met him at Rude Dogs in West Covina. Between the time before I dated Sean. And Mike, KJ Mike also was there, so who knows. I worked for Mike as a KJ for a while, and I remember, I guess Mike had, according to Sean, Mike had said some like promiscuous stuff about me. So I brought it up with Mike. I was like, I can't work with you anymore. And he's like, why, what happened? And I told him, I said, well, my boyfriend said that you said this about me, and it makes me uncomfortable to work for you now. And then Mike had a big old fit with Sean, and then Sean was like, why did you tell him? I said, because that's what you told me. Why would I'm going to give him a valid reason why I'm not going to work for him anymore. And Mike called me back, was like, I never said anything like that. I don't know why he would say that. Like, I understand if you don't want to work for me, but I've never said anything like that. So I ended up working for Mike again. And Mike had the long hair, really long blonde hair. He was a character. He was pretty chill, but he was a character. You didn't want to mess around with him. But who knows what also participated and happened with me there. Because he did have his van, and he would let me drive his van with all the karaoke equipment in the back, and I would set everything up and do this in Irwindale. It was at a Denny's in Irwindale, and then also at an Applebee's. Anyway, I digress because I was talking about Val, and then I went to, Giovanni. So Giovanni I met at Rude Dogs, along with where the KJ, Mike, Sean, and what was her stupid name? She's a Scorpio female. I forget her name. She was an idiot. Who totally betrayed me, but that's all Scorpios, whether they're a man or a woman, they always betray me because they're extremists. Anyhow, Oh yeah, but I played mind games with her. She hated it. I loved it. But I pushed too far. I remember I pushed into her intentionally. She's like, "You hit me." I was like, "No, I didn't." She like she was such a coward. I was like, no, no respect. Because when I was with Sean, all of a sudden he was hanging out at her house. I was like, I really don't feel comfortable with that. She was like, I don't care what you feel like. Oh, you don't care what I feel like? Okay, well, I'm just gonna go hang out with your friend who is a manager at Stater Brothers because because I used to work at Stater Brothers, so he and I had a lot to talk about. He already had his bachelor's in economics and he was going back to be a lawyer. Crap, I forgot his name off the top of my head. Maybe, no, I don't think it was Michael. Anyway, but William. William and I got along very well. Speaking of a William, I don't know if William Prieto is a participant. Maybe he is. He was an absolute sadist. And I took his virginity. But I was so in love with him. He was an imitation angel for me. But it wasn't just that. He was very fascinating because he was so autistic. And the way that he had to understand, human semantics was, we spent so much time together. We would go out for dinner. Yeah, this is taking longer because now I'm thinking of other people, but I didn't write it down. Most of them, I'm almost done with who I wrote down, but I already added like 3 more people that might participate in this horrible torture of my existence. But William was a sadist, and he's the only guy that I ever let put me on a chain. I literally was like, yes, I put a choker collar on, and I gave him the leash, and there's a picture of us. But he was always very soft and sweet with me. And I really did want to entertain a lot of the fetish ideology with him, but his fetish was strictly about sadism and torture and pain. And I was like, I'm not that much of a masochist, my friend. Sorry, I'm not. Speaking of that, no, I won't even talk about that, right? Anyway, going back, Giovanni, he was younger than me, and I really liked him. He kind of reminded me of Bruno Mars, but cuter. Anyway, so I met him at Rude Dogs, and I just was like, screw it. It was a song. I was like, I'm gonna dance with somebody. So I just started dancing with him. We got along great. We talked for probably about 3 weeks, but he kept playing stupid games, and he was like, yeah, let's mess around. And I was like, sure. But every time I told him, I was like, I won't do it without a condom. And every time he wouldn't have a condom, and I was so broke, even though I was going to school, I just didn't have the time. I think I just didn't have the time. Every time we met up, I just did not have the time to get a condom, and then like afterward, I couldn't even. And then by that, I think by the 3rd week, I just didn't have the money, and I was like, yeah, if you bring a condom, we're down. All right, I'll bring a condom. He shows up outside of Rude Dogs, no condom. I said, well, we're not going to do anything then. He literally walks out the car. I was like, what just happened? And then he was like, well, since you're not going to do it, whatever, I'll find somebody else. I was like, all right, bye. Screw you. I didn't even go into Rude Dogs. I went into Rude Dogs to talk to him, and he said that. I was like, all right, bye. Bye, Felicia. Left that, and then I thought maybe I just mistook him or something. And I called him a couple days later, and he was like, well, you going to let me hit it or what? And I was like, we're done. He gave me my answer. Cut him out. But there was one during that time before he left the car, that last time we saw each other physically, he said, I could take care of you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you can take care of me? I'm in school. I'm doing good. Like, I think I was 23 and he was 21. He's like, don't worry, I could take care of you. I got all these cars. They were from dealerships. He worked for a dealership. They weren't his cars. But I was like, what are you talking about? That you can take care of me? I'm in school. I'm taking care of myself. I don't want to have a kid right now. What is wrong with you? 23, he's talking about it. So he was trying. He was really trying to get me prego. And I was like, nope. So we ended up never even doing it. The last person on my list. So I made an earlier statement claiming that I do believe my little sister actually used her sexuality. Somebody said it was a sister that used her sexuality to stop my court documentation. I mistook. I had to listen to it for a minute, and then once I thought about it again, Deja vu. Shauna. She does karaoke, like she does KJ for Chris at Duke's Bar and Grill off of Blaine in Riverside now. She helps him out, I think, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But before that, she and Joanna were doing a whole food catering service, and I thought it was doing well. And then Joanna went MIA, all of a sudden did some engineering in Victorville, and then got married to somebody and went off on her wild blue yonder. But I think she probably went off claiming she was me, doing some engineering for about 6 months, and then, you know, used my identity to get married and then have a kid. And then she just went MIA on everybody. It was weird. It was so weird. She was just up and out real quick. And I was just like, what the hell happened? And I never had a problem with her. But she was very promiscuous at the bar. She was always like, hi guys, how you doing? Like, I mean, she was really... And then I remember one time she was like wearing this whole unicorn outfit for Halloween. And now I understand the concept of unicorn. She was trying to do a destiny swap with me. So now it makes sense. Now with all the information that I have. But Shauna became a paralegal at a law firm. And I thought that was very random because Shauna has medical issues where she can't really do too much. And that's why she was doing her own, you know, work from home, and the catering thing I thought was doing really well. She has a son, and I was like, oh, you know, you should meet my little sister, your son and her, and you know, you both have sons around the same age, they could be friends. And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I have a girlfriend that I can bring into the family kind of thing. Yeah. So, but she is African American, so she is a sister. She's the one. And she's very promiscuous. She would be like, I don't care what anybody thinks. And guys always come up to her like, what? She's very open. She's very open. But she's very good at cutting people down, too. You know, I kind of liked that about her. But to know that she utilized the legal system against me, she can go F herself. And if I ever see her again, you know what? It doesn't even matter if I see her again, because karma's going to get you anyway. Sorry. God saw it all, Shauna. Yeah, but those were the only names. One more name I have. Now, this one's a gimme to me, because I already saw several, over a decade ago, I think, where I'll say his name in a minute, where he actually was talking to his wife saying, oh, you want to get RAP'd by the N-word, ers. And I was like, what? And he's an actor. And I loved his work. Braveheart. You already know who I'm talking about. Mel Gibson. I already know he hates my guts because I am one of the N-words. So, and that's why my cousin, Gary didn't like me. Danny doesn't like me. Danny is older. Let's see. When I met Danny, so I was 8, 9. He was 4. Yeah. Yeah, he was Julie's age. Yeah. He's probably the one that went to Yale. I can't think about who went to Yale. Unless it was Sophian, who is now here in the United States. But to the biggest, it might be Sophian. Sophian was very smart. But if he was having an affair with my aunt, I was under the impression that they were all still in Germany. So then it wouldn't be Sophian. But it wouldn't be Danny either, because Danny's also in Germany. So I don't know what cousin is the one that went to Yale. Have no idea. Or Harvard. Excuse me. Harvard. But yeah, going back. Mel Gibson, yeah. Total racist. That's not a surprise to me. That he would be a participant of this. Of course. You know, just... What? And he's a participant of Scientology as well, like Tom Cruise. You know, I can't even blame a lot of these people because the world is already so dark. How could they not fall? You know? Like, how could they not fall? Well, I didn't fall. So I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there about several other names that I remembered that our good capabilities of being participants of it. From my knowledge, there was a ritual placed on my life while I was a child, so these energies, these dark energies, spread and go into people and infiltrate them. I had a conversation with my friend Mateo a couple days ago, and the Lord told me to stop trying because he was already lost. And it broke my heart. But at the same time, I knew it. The conversation was obvious, you know, because I told him, I was like, I've been abducted, I've been RAP'd, I've been tortured, all for, you know, the wealth and blah, 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 and my family's done this. And I said, you know, I already know you're participating. I said, I know you lied about me. I know, you know, you're with Melissa and you claim this, claim that. And he, what are you talking about? But how would you know that? Come on, bro. Rhetorical. You know, it's a paradox. You're going to ask me one and then pretty much confirm exactly what I'm saying when you're saying, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. But why would you think that? Mateo, I love you. You're not clever. You're not. Oh, one other person. Patrick Harrington. Supposedly he might be one of my living relatives in some manner. I don't know. I have no idea anymore. I really don't care. As far as I'm concerned, everybody who's quote unquote related to me is most likely not related to me and most likely wants to do me harm. So like, I don't want any interaction with any of you. Yeah, so anyway, it did become an extremely long video. I just wanted to put some names out there. On top of that, I'm doing great. I'm just tired of these freaking monitoring spirits. Like, you guys keep trying. I'm already anointed. I'm already baptized. I'm already good. I'm good to go. So I don't know. I know you felt like you were winning the war all these years, but the war's already won, and you guys are not the winners. I pray that God has mercy on your souls. And I pray that the ones that survive are able to move forward and learn from this. Anyhow, I'm going to tinker around and figure out how I can do some music on my phone, because that's what I've been thinking about for the last couple days. That's why I haven't really posted anything, on top of the fact that I was trying to save stuff that I had posted to make sure that it's like visible. So I hope everybody has a good night. You noticed that this was very I decided to put it somewhere instead of like holding it so that it's not always shaking, because, you know, I don't know. Do you like seeing me closer or do you like seeing me far away? I don't know. It makes me look like I have bigger boobs than I do. I'm just being silly. Anyway, I hope everybody has a good night. Take care, and praise the Lord, and be grateful for what you have. I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for everything He has done, for all the enlightenment, for the eureka. I've had like 2 or 3 eureka moments these last 2 days, and they weren't bad. It was just, I'm not used to having eureka moments. So I'm not used to being like, I didn't know that. So God is messing with me. He's playing. He's like, I'm gonna show you something you don't know. Watch this. So I'm good. I have a beautiful relationship with Almighty. I'm excited. I'm excited for everything. Yeah. Anyhow, like I said, God bless. Take care of yourselves. And my targeted individuals, I love you. I pray that you guys stay strong. You guys are protected. No evil, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. And I say that and I command it. You are my family. And I will pray for your protection always. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Have a beautiful night.